Hello there, peaceful travelers. Tonight we're not looking at crowns or castles. We're looking at the people underneath them. The ones who held up the whole structure without ever seeing their names written down. We're talking about 3 lives in medieval Britain. The monk behind stone walls, the peasant in the field, the soldier on the march. People who endured cold, hunger, duty, and 100 quiet indignities, all without the promise of glory or the comfort of choice. This was a world lit by firelight and measured by church bells. A world where most people never travelled more than a few miles from where they were born. Where winter meant survival, not inconvenience. Where illness came without warning and often without cure. Where your station in life was decided at birth, and questioning it was not just impractical, but unthinkable. The air smelled different then. Wood smoke, always. The tang of animals living too close to people. Wet wool and unwashed bodies. Tallow candles if you were fortunate. Nothing but darkness if you weren't. The smells we've sanitized away, the discomforts we've engineered out of existence. These were simply life. Everything was harder. Water had to be carried. Fire had to be maintained. Food had to be grown, preserved, rationed. A simple loaf of bread represented hours of labor. From planting grain to grinding flour to baking over a fire that had to be kept at exactly the right temperature. Nothing came easy, nothing came quick, and yet people lived. They found joy in small things. A good harvest, a child surviving infancy, a roof that mostly held, a day without rain. Their expectations were different. They didn't ask for comfort, they asked for survival. And when they got it, when they made it through another winter, another illness, another season, that was enough. That was everything. The church told them their suffering had meaning. That hardship in this life would be rewarded in the next. That obedience to earthly lords mirrored obedience to heavenly ones. Whether they fully believed this or simply had no alternative narrative, they carried on. They bent their backs. They bowed their heads. They worked until their bodies gave out. These are their stories, not the dramatic tales of battles won or kingdoms founded, but the quiet stories of endurance. Of people who simply refused to stop, who kept planting seeds even when the soil was poor, who kept praying even when heaven seemed silent, who kept marching even when they didn't know where they were going or why. If this kind of calm, slow history helps you unwind, feel free to like and subscribe, but only if it brings you genuine peace. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what draws you to these forgotten voices. So settle in, find your comfortable position, and let's begin with the first life. The one lived in silence. The monastery sits on a hill or perhaps in a valley, or tucked against a forest edge where the trees grow too thick for easy passage. The location doesn't matter as much as what the location provides. Distance. From towns, from roads, from the noise of ordinary living. You can see it from miles away if you know where to look. Stone walls rising grey and patient against whichever sky happens to be overhead. A bell tower reaching upward like a finger, reminding God where to look. The walls are thick, not decorative, not welcoming, They're built to last and to separate. Inside is one world, outside is another, and the gate between them opens rarely, closes firmly, and is never left unattended. You arrived here years ago. Maybe you were sent as a boy, a younger son with no inheritance. Maybe you came seeking something you couldn't name. Maybe you were running from something you could. The reasons don't matter anymore. You took vows. You gave away your possessions, what few you had. You put on the rough wool habit, black or brown depending on your order. You learned the prayers. You learned when to speak and, more importantly, when not to. This is your life now. These stones, these brothers, these bells. This rhythm that doesn't change with seasons or years or the passage of kings beyond these walls. You will live here. You will age here. You will be buried here in the small cemetery beyond the cloister where the grass grows long and no one carves elaborate markers. Just a simple cross. Just your name if they remember to add it. The monastery isn't large by the standards of palaces or cathedrals, but it's bigger than any peasant village. There's the church at the centre, always the church, with its vaulted ceiling and cold stone floor. The cloister surrounds it, a covered walkway open to a central garden where nothing grows but herbs and silence. The dormitory where you sleep stretches along one side, a long room lined with straw mattresses. The refectory where you eat sits opposite, equally spare. The chapter house for meetings, the scriptorium for writing, the infirmary for the sick, the warming room, the only place with a fire outside the kitchen, used sparingly. Everything is stone. Stone floors, stone walls, stone stairs worn smooth by centuries of sandaled feet. The cold lives in the stones. It never truly leaves, not even in summer. In winter it becomes something you wear like a second robe. Your day doesn't begin with dawn. It begins in the deepest part of night, in what the world outside calls the hour of ghosts, matins. The bell rings in darkness, a sound that pulls you from whatever thin sleep you'd found. You rise immediately. There's no lingering, no stretching, just the automatic movement of a body trained to obey before consciousness fully returns. You shuffle down dark corridors with your brothers, a line of hooded shadows moving toward the church. Your breath makes clouds. Your feet are numb. The stones are always coldest just before dawn. In the church, you take your place in the choir stalls. The abbot begins. You chant. Latin words you've repeated so often they've worn grooves in your mind. The psalms rise and fall in the darkness. You don't think about meaning anymore. You simply let the sounds move through you, ancient and rhythmic, like water over stones. After matins, there's lauds at dawn, then prime as the sun breaks the horizon, then terce mid-morning, sext at noon, none in the afternoon, vespers as the light fails, compline before bed. 8 times a day you stop whatever you're doing and return to the church. 8 times you kneel and stand and chant and pray. This is the Opus Dei, the work of God. It's why you're here. Not to farm or write or think, though you do those things, but to pray. To turn your hours into an offering. to mark time with devotion so steady it becomes the heartbeat of the day. Between these prayer times you work, because idleness, as the rule reminds you, is the enemy of the soul. Your hands must be busy even as your heart stays still. If it's harvest season, you're in the fields. The monastery owns land, quite a lot of it. Some worked by lay brothers, some by peasants who owe rent. But during critical times, everyone helps. You bend in the barley, cutting with a sickle that's older than you. The work is the same as any peasant does, but you do it in silence. No songs, no complaints, just the rhythm of cut, gather, bundle, move. Your back aches. The rule doesn't excuse you from that. Your hands blister. Prayer doesn't prevent blisters. But there's something almost meditative in the repetition. The way the mind empties when the body is fully occupied. You think of it as prayer of another kind. The motion of your arms becomes a form of devotion. In winter, the work moves indoors. You might be sent to the workshop to mend tools, repair furniture, carve new altarpieces. You might help in the brewery, because even monasteries need ale. The water isn't always safe. Beer keeps brothers healthy, relatively speaking. Or you might be assigned to the kitchen, peeling turnips for an hour while maintaining custody of the eyes, meaning you look down, not around. Not speaking, not humming, just the knife, the turnip, the pile growing slowly beside you. The kitchen is warmer than anywhere else. You learn to move slowly so your tasks take longer. Some brothers bake bread, others tend the bees. There's always cheese to make, fish to salt, wood to chop. The monastery aims for self-sufficiency. What can't be grown or made must be bought or traded, and both require contact with the outside world, which is discouraged. If you're fortunate, or perhaps unfortunate depending on your view, you're assigned to the scriptorium. This is where manuscripts are copied, where knowledge is preserved, where the written word is treated as sacred as the spoken prayer. The room faces north to catch steady, indirect light. There are desks, slanted surfaces with a small shelf for inkwells. Each brother has his assigned place. You sit for hours hunched over parchment, copying texts letter by perfect letter. The parchment comes from sheep or calves, scraped clean, stretched, dried. It's expensive. Every sheet is precious. You can't afford mistakes. But mistakes happen anyway. Sometimes you scrape away errors with a knife and pray the repair doesn't show. Sometimes the whole sheet is ruined and you accept whatever penance the master of scribes assigns. The ink is made from oak galls, iron salts, and gum arabic. It smells metallic and slightly rotten. Your fingers are permanently stained, under your nails, in the creases of your knuckles. No amount of washing removes it completely. You learn to think of it as a mark of your labor. You copy psalters, gospels, saints' lives, theological treatises, sometimes classical works, Aristotle or Cicero, preserved because someone centuries ago decided they mattered enough to save. You don't always understand what you're copying. That's not the point. The point is accuracy, fidelity, to pass the words unchanged to the next generation. Some brothers illuminate manuscripts, adding decorated initials and margin illustrations. Gold leaf if the monastery can afford it. Bright blues and reds ground from rare minerals. These books take years to complete. You might spend your entire monastic life on a single Bible, and when it's finished, it will be chained to a lectern so it can never leave. The work is tedious, your eyes strain, your hand cramps, your neck develops a permanent ache. In winter, your fingers go so numb you have to pause and breathe on them, carefully so no moisture touches the parchment. There's no heat in the scriptorium. Fire and manuscripts don't coexist. But there's pride in it too. Quiet pride. You're saving something. These words might outlive empires. Long after your dust, someone will read this page and think thoughts you helped preserve. It's the closest thing to immortality a monk can claim. You eat twice a day. Once after the morning work, once in the late afternoon. The meals are simple. Bread, always. Vegetables from the garden. Beans or peas, fish on many days, occasionally eggs or cheese. No meat. The rule forbids it for healthy monks. Though the sick in the infirmary can have broth, and that broth might contain meat if the chickens have been generous. But for you, in health, it's vegetables, grains, fish. The same basic rotation season after season. The refectory is a long hall with tables running the length. You sit on benches, crowded together. But you don't chat. You don't joke. You eat in silence while one brother stands at a lectern and reads aloud. Scripture, usually. Sometimes the lives of saints. Sometimes a letter from the abbot. You learn to listen and chew at the same time. You learn to tune out the reading when you need to focus on not choking. The food is plain but sufficient. You're never truly hungry here, which is more than most people outside these walls can say. But you're also never satisfied. The portions are measured. Gluttony is a sin. Your appetite is something to master, not indulge. On feast days, there might be an extra course. Honey on the bread, fresh fruit if it's summer, once a year perhaps a special fish pie. These small luxuries are treated with solemnity. You bow your head in extra thanks. You eat slowly, making it last. Wine appears sometimes, water mixed with a little wine, diluted until it's barely more than colored water. It's medicinal, practical, not pleasurable. The goal is never pleasure. When the meal ends, you file out in order. Your stomach is neither full nor empty. Your body has fuel. That's sufficient. You return to work or prayer or study, and the refectory falls silent again until the next meal comes around. Everything, every action, every hour, every thought you're supposed to think is governed by the rule. In most monasteries, it's the rule of Saint Benedict, written centuries ago by a man who never met you, but seems to know exactly how you'd fail without guidance. The rule is read aloud regularly in chapter meeting. Everyone stands. The abbot reads. You listen, though you've heard it hundreds of times. Humility, obedience, stability, silence. These are your vows, your pillars. Humility means thinking of yourself last, not performing humility, but truly believing you're the least worthy in any room. It's harder than it sounds. Pride creeps in. You catch yourself thinking you've copied manuscripts more carefully than Brother Thomas. You've prayed more fervently than Brother John. Then you remember the rule, and you mentally prostrate yourself again. Obedience means doing what you're told without question, without delay, without resentment. When the abbot assigns you to the stables instead of the scriptorium, you go. When you're told to fast an extra day, you fast. Your will is not your own. You surrendered it the day you took vows. Stability means you stay. You don't transfer to another monastery because you heard they have better food. You don't leave because you're tired or lonely or doubt-ridden. This place is your place until death. Your brothers are your brothers. Your vows bind you here like roots bind a tree, and silence. The rule values silence above almost everything. There are times when speech is permitted, during work if necessary, during recreation hour briefly. But most of your day passes without words. You communicate in gestures. You learn to make eye contact, convey what sentences once did. You nod, point, occasionally write quick notes on a wax tablet if something must be communicated precisely. The silence isn't empty. It's full of the sounds you never noticed before, your own breathing, the shuffle of sandals on stone, the wind against the windows, birds in the cloister garden. The silence becomes a presence, almost a companion. You grow comfortable with it, then dependent on it. Then, eventually, you prefer it. Speaking feels like an interruption. You sleep in the dormitory, a long room lined with narrow beds. Each brother has a straw mattress, a thin blanket, a pillow stuffed with straw or wool if you're lucky. There are no partitions, no privacy. You sleep among your brothers, hearing their breath, their coughs, their occasional dreams murmured aloud. In summer, the dormitory is stuffy. In winter, it's frigid. There's no heat. The windows are shuttered but poorly sealed. You sleep in your habit, adding your cloak as extra covering. Still you wake shivering. But you don't sleep long. A few hours after Compline, then you rise for matins. Then perhaps you sleep again until Lords. Your sleep is broken, fragmented. Your body adapts. You learn to fall asleep instantly and wake just as quickly. There's no grogginess, no lingering in bed. The bell rings and you rise. Some nights you don't sleep well at all. You lie awake staring at the ceiling beams, thinking thoughts you're probably not supposed to think. You wonder about the life you didn't lead, the family you might have had. You confess these thoughts eventually. The priest in confession listens without judgment and assigns penance, extra prayers, a day of fasting, manual labor in the coldest part of the season. You complete the penance and the thoughts fade until they return, and the cycle continues. Sometimes, especially in the deep hours between services, you wonder why you're here, what all this accomplishes, whether the prayers really matter, whether God is listening, whether this life means anything at all. The doubt comes and goes. You confess it. You're told it's normal. Even the saints doubted. You accept this. You continue. You tell yourself that prayer is work, that by praying the hours, you're holding something in place, that the rhythm of devotion creates a stability the world needs even if the world doesn't know it, that by copying scriptures you're preserving knowledge, that by living simply you're testifying to different values. Some days you believe it, other days you're just going through the motions, but the motions continue regardless. The bells ring, you rise, you pray, you work, you eat, you sleep, and tomorrow you'll do it all again. There's a strange peace in that, not happiness exactly, not fulfillment, but purpose, routine, the knowledge that your life has shape, even if it doesn't have variety, that you're part of something older than yourself, that when you die, others will continue what you started. You've given up much: family, possessions, freedom, comfort, choice. But you've gained something too: community, purpose, a kind of interior silence that the world outside will never know. And perhaps that's enough. The monastery bells are ringing somewhere in the distance. You can hear them if the wind is right, a faint sound that tells you it's time for prayer you'll never attend. You're already awake. You've been awake since before the sun, because here in the fields, in the village that has no name anyone important remembers, there are no bells for you, just the work. Always the work. You're a peasant. The word sits heavy even when no one says it aloud. You work land that isn't yours. You live in a house that technically belongs to someone else. You owe taxes, labor, goods, and deference to a lord you rarely see. Your life is measured not in achievements but in survival. Did you make it through winter? Did the harvest come in? Are your children still breathing? These are the victories that matter. Your village is a handful of families clustered together in a landscape that barely notices you. Maybe 15 households, maybe 20. Everyone knows everyone. Everyone knows everyone's business. Privacy is a concept for people with multiple rooms. You have one room. Sometimes two if a lean-to hasn't collapsed yet. The houses are wattle and daub, woven sticks covered in mud mixed with straw and manure. The walls sag, the roofs leak. The whole structure leans slightly to one side as if tired of standing. You patch it every spring. By autumn it needs patching again. Inside, the air is always slightly smoky because the fire has no proper chimney. Just a hole in the roof that sometimes lets smoke out and always lets rain in. Your eyes water. Your throat scratches. You don't notice anymore. The floor is dirt, packed hard from years of walking, but still dirt. When it rains, it softens. When it freezes, it cracks. You spread straw or rushes to cover it. The straw gets damp, gets dirty, gets walked into nothing. Then you sweep it out and start over. You share this space with your family, your spouse, your children, your aging parent who can't work anymore but still needs feeding. Sometimes a cousin, sometimes an orphaned child from a neighbor who died. Everyone sleeps in the same room. The only privacy is turning to face the wall. The animals live here too. A cow if you're fortunate, chickens definitely. Maybe a pig. They're not invited in for companionship. They're here because their body heat helps warm the space. Because keeping them outside means risking theft. Because there's nowhere else to put them. Your bed is a wooden frame stuffed with straw. You share it. The straw pokes through the fabric. Every few months you have to empty it, refill it, hope the new straw is drier than the old. Blankets are wool, heavy, scratchy, never quite warm enough. You sleep in your clothes. Taking them off would be absurd. The cold would kill you. You wake before dawn because that's when the work begins. You don't ease into the day. There's no coffee, no breakfast, no gentle awakening, just consciousness returning and the immediate knowledge that you're already behind. First, the animals. The cow needs milking, the chickens need checking, the pig needs whatever scraps you've saved. You move through these tasks in darkness or near darkness, your hands knowing the way even when your eyes don't. Then it's to the fields. You work land divided into strips. Some strips are yours to work for your own food. Others belong to the Lord and you work them as payment for living here. You don't get to choose which days you work which fields. The manor decides. The steward tells you. You obey. The work is backbreaking, literally. You're bent over most of the day, ploughing, planting, weeding, harvesting. The tools are simple and heavy. A wooden plough, maybe with an iron tip if your village can afford it, a sickle for cutting grain, a hoe for breaking ground. Your hands develop calluses on top of calluses. Your back develops a permanent ache that no amount of rest can fix. In spring, you plant. You walk the fields, scattering seeds by hand. Barley, rye, oats. You don't plant wheat. Wheat is for lords and merchants and people who can afford white bread. You plant what will grow even in poor soil, even in bad weather, even when everything else fails. In summer, you weed, endlessly. The weeds grow faster than the crops. You pull them by hand. Your fingers are always dirty. The dirt gets under your nails, into the creases of your palms, ground into your skin like a stain that won't wash away. In autumn, you harvest. This is the most critical time. Everything depends on bringing in the crops before the weather turns. You work from dawn until you can't see anymore. You cut the grain with a sickle. You bundle it. You carry it. You thresh it by beating it with flails until your arms are numb. You winnow it by tossing it in the air and letting the wind carry away the chaff. And while you're doing this, while you're working yourself into exhaustion, trying to secure enough food to survive winter, you're also expected to work the Lord's fields. Days of your time given freely, because that's the arrangement. That's feudalism. You work his land before you work yours. His harvest is secured before yours. If there's not enough time left to finish your own fields, well, that's your problem. What you eat depends on what you can grow, preserve, or beg. It's not varied, it's not exciting, it's barely adequate. Most days it's pottage, a watery stew that lives in a pot over the fire and never fully empties. You add to it constantly, vegetables, grains, legumes, maybe a bone for flavor if you're lucky. The pot gets stirred, skimmed, refilled. You eat from it morning and night. It tastes like survival. Bread when you can make it. Dark, dense, heavy bread made from rye or barley. It doesn't rise much. It crumbles quickly. It's hard enough when fresh that it could double as a weapon when stale. But it fills the stomach. It provides bulk. And when you soak it in the pottage, it almost becomes pleasant. Vegetables from your small garden. Onions, leeks, cabbage, turnips. You grow them close to the house where you can watch them, where you can protect them from animals and thieves. Nothing exotic, nothing sweet, just the tough, hardy vegetables that can survive neglect and poor soil. Meat is rare, very rare. You don't eat your livestock unless you have no choice. The cow gives milk, the chickens give eggs, the The pig is being saved for winter slaughter. To eat any of them before their time is to rob yourself of future food. So you wait, you endure, you chew your bread and pretend it's enough. Sometimes there's cheese, hard, dry, tangy cheese made from milk you couldn't drink fast enough. It keeps longer than milk. It provides some variety. You eat it in small portions to make it last. Ale is your drink, not water. Water is dangerous. It comes from wells or streams that might be contaminated. Ale is safer. You brew weak ale, small beer with barely enough alcohol to kill the bacteria. Your children drink it. Your grandparents drink it. Everyone drinks it because the alternative is risking illness. But some years there isn't enough. Some years the harvest fails. The rains don't come, or they come too much. The wheat rots in the field. The barley never ripens. And then winter comes and you're facing months with stores that won't last. You start rationing. 1 meal a day instead of 2. Smaller portions. You water down the pottage until it's barely more than broth. You make famine bread, mixing flour with whatever you can find. Ground peas, acorns, tree bark, literally. It tastes like desperation, but it's something. The children cry from hunger. You give them your portion. Your stomach cramps. You ignore it. You've survived hunger before. You'll survive it again. Probably. People die in bad years. Quietly, usually. They just get weaker and weaker until one morning they don't wake up. The village buries them. The priest says words. Life continues for those who remain, because there's no other choice. You don't own the land you work. You're a villain, bound to it. Not quite a slave, but not free either. You can't leave without permission. You can't sell your plot. When you die, your children inherit your obligations. The Lord lives in the manor house, stone or timber, large, with a roof that doesn't leak. You've never been inside. You've seen it from a distance. That's enough. You don't deal with the Lord directly. You deal with his steward, a man with a ledger who comes around collecting what's owed. Grain, eggs, chickens, days of labor. He writes everything down. You can't read what he writes. You trust he's honest. You have no choice but to trust. You owe week work, regular labor on the manor lands, a few days each week, year round. And you owe boon work, extra labor during harvest. When the Lord's crops need bringing in, you drop everything. Your own fields wait. His fields are the priority. You owe taxes in kind, a portion of everything you produce. Grain, wool, livestock, the best portions. The Lord takes first. You keep what remains. You owe fees. To use the mill, though it's the only mill. To use the oven, though it's the only oven large enough for bread. To get married. To inherit your father's land. To move to another village, which you're not allowed to do anyway. What you get in return is theoretical protection. If bandits attack, the Lord has men at arms. If war comes, the Lord fights. If famine strikes, the Lord might distribute grain from his stores. But mostly what you get is permission to stay, to keep working the land, to keep living in your leaning house, to continue existing in the only place you've ever known. The system is ancient. It predates you. It will outlast you. You don't question it. Questioning doesn't plant grain. When you get sick, you don't see a physician. Physicians are for wealthy people. You see the village wise woman, if there is one. Or you treat yourself with herbs your mother taught you about. Or you pray and hope. Fever, coughs, infections, injuries from work. They're all common. You cut yourself with a sickle. The wound festers. You pack it with cobwebs or moss or whatever folk remedy someone suggests. Sometimes it works. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes you lose the finger. Sometimes the infection spreads and you lose more. Childbirth is dangerous. Your wife has borne 5 children. 3 survived. The other 2 died within days, 1 in childbirth itself. The village midwife did what she could. It wasn't enough. You buried them in the churchyard, small graves. The priest said they're with God now. You hope so. You don't think about it too much. Thinking doesn't help. Plague comes through sometimes. Not always the famous Black Death, though that came and devastated everything. But other illnesses, sweating sickness, dysentery, smallpox. When sickness arrives, you can't quarantine. You don't understand contagion. You just know that sometimes whole families die in a week. You keep working even when you're unwell, because the work doesn't stop for illness. The cow still needs milking, the field still needs tending. You work through pain, through fever, through exhaustion. You work until you collapse. Then you rest for a day. Then you work again. Your body ages fast. You're 35, but you feel 50. Your joints ache. Your teeth are rotting. Your vision is getting worse. There are no glasses for people like you. No dentists. No retirement. You work until you can't work anymore. Then you become a burden on your children. Then you die. The church is the largest building in the village. Stone, solid, with a bell tower. It's where you're baptized, married and buried. It's the center of everything. You attend Mass on Sundays and holy days. You don't understand the Latin. The priest speaks words that mean nothing to your ears. But you stand when others stand. You kneel when others kneel. You make the sign of the cross. You participate in the mystery even if you don't comprehend it. The church takes its share too. 1/10 of everything you produce. The tithe. It's not optional. It's owed to God, though God's representative collects it. Your best grain goes into the tithe barn, your best eggs, your fattest chicken. On holy days, there's a feast. The church provides bread, sometimes meat. You eat more in one meal than you have in a week. You're grateful. You sing hymns. You feel connected to something larger than your daily struggle. The saints are your intermediaries. You pray to Saint Isidore for good crops, to Saint Anthony when you lose something, to Saint Sebastian during plague. You don't know their histories, you just know their names and what they help with. Pilgrimage is something you dream about, but will probably never do. To visit a shrine, to see a holy relic, to walk beyond your village boundaries. But who would tend your fields? Who would milk the cow? Dreams are for people with margin in their lives. You have none. When you die, the church will bury you. In consecrated ground if you've paid your dues. Your family will pay for prayers for your soul. Not many prayers. They can't afford many, but some. Enough to give you hope that purgatory won't last forever. Your life is measured in seasons, not years. You don't know how old you are exactly. You know you were born in the year the old bridge collapsed. You know you married the year of the great frost. That's enough. Spring means planting, hope, the possibility that this year will be better. The soil soft under your hands, seeds scattered, the ritual of renewal. Summer means growth and endless labor, weeding, watching, praying for the right amount of rain, not too much, not too little, just enough. Autumn means harvest, panic, racing against time and weather, bringing everything in before it's too late, threshing until your arms go numb, storing what you can, hoping it's enough. Winter means survival, short days, long nights, hunger, the slow consumption of stored food, the knowledge that by February you'll be scraping the bottom of the barrel, the hope that you'll make it to spring, and then spring again. The cycle repeats, every year the same. Planting, growing, harvesting, surviving. Your children will do this. Their children will do this. The land demands it. The Lord demands it. God demands it. You don't dream of escape. Where would you go? What would you do? This is your life. Hard, yes. Unfair, yes. But it's all you know. And there's dignity in the work, in coaxing food from reluctant soil, in keeping your family alive another year, in enduring. You won't be remembered. No one will write your name, but you'll live anyway. In the fields you tended, in the children you raised, in the bread you baked and the prayers you muttered and the seeds you scattered. The work continues. The sun rises. You bend to the soil once more. You never wanted to be a soldier. That's the first thing to understand. Unlike the monk who chose his walls and the peasant who was born to his field, you're here because someone decided you had to be. A lord called for men. Your village had to provide a quota. You were young enough, healthy enough, unlucky enough. And now you're walking, always walking. They came to your village on a day that started like any other. Representatives of the local lord, or perhaps the king. Though kings feel like legends when you're standing in a field holding a hoe. They announced that men were needed. A war somewhere. A border dispute. A rebellion. The reasons were vague and didn't matter. What mattered was the number. Your village owed 3 men. The village elder negotiated, tried to argue the quota down, failed. 3 men. You were selected along with 2 others. One was the blacksmith's son, strong from working the forge. The other was a troublemaker. Everyone was secretly glad to see go. And you had no particular skills to keep you home, no wealthy family to pay for an exemption, no physical defect to disqualify you. You said goodbye to your family. Your wife didn't cry, or if she did, she didn't let you see it. She handed you a small bundle of food, bread, hard cheese. It would last 3 days if you rationed. Your children stared at you with eyes that didn't understand. You promised you'd return. You weren't sure you believed it. They gave you basic equipment. A spear, because spears are cheap. A leather jerkin, hardened but not armor, not really. A dagger if you were fortunate. Maybe a helmet, though more likely a leather cap. No sword. Swords are for knights, for nobility, for people who matter. And then you walked, joining a growing column of men from other villages. None of you know each other. None of you know where you're going. You just follow the man in front of you and try not to think about what's coming. War is less about fighting than it is about walking. You walk for days, weeks, sometimes months. Your feet develop blisters. The blisters burst. New blisters form on top of the wounds. Eventually, your feet become leather themselves. You carry your equipment, the spear over your shoulder, your jerkin bundled when it's hot, worn when it's cold, your small pack with whatever personal items you manage to bring, a spare shirt, a wooden bowl, a lucky charm your wife gave you. Nothing heavy. Everything you carry is weight added to the already unbearable weight of the march. The roads are terrible when there are roads. Often you're walking through fields, forests, along riverbanks. The path is wherever the army decides to go. You walk through mud that sucks at your boots, through streams that soak you to the waist, through summer heat that makes you dizzy, through autumn rain that never stops. You eat when food is provided. Sometimes that's daily. Sometimes it's not. The army has supply wagons, but they often can't keep pace. Or they get stuck. Or they're raided. When food runs low, you forage. You take from villages you pass through. Politely at first, with payment. Later, not so politely. The villagers hide what they can. You take what you find. You feel guilty. Not guilty enough to stop. Water is easier, rivers, streams, wells. You drink whatever looks cleanest. Sometimes it makes you sick. Dysentery runs through the camp regularly. Men shit themselves while marching. There's no privacy, no dignity. You keep walking anyway. At night, you camp. Sometimes in a field. Sometimes in a forest. Sometimes outside a town that won't let you enter. You sleep on the ground. If you're smart, you've gathered grass or leaves to soften it slightly. If you're very smart, you sleep close to others for warmth. There are no tents for men like you. Officers have tents. Knights have pavilions. You have the sky and hope it doesn't rain. When it does rain, you curl into yourself and endure. Fire is communal. Groups of 10 or 12 men around each fire. You share what you have. A bit of stolen chicken, some turnips. Someone always has something. The food is pooled, cooked in a shared pot, distributed as fairly as exhaustion allows. You make companions, not friends exactly. Friendship requires time and peace, but companions, men you march beside, men who share their fire, men who'll help you up when you stumble. You learn their names, their villages, their reasons for being here, though the reasons are all the same. Someone with power wanted you here. Some men die on the march, before any battle, before any glory. They just die. Sickness usually, fever, infection, exhaustion. One day they're walking, the next they're falling behind. Then they're sitting by the road. Then they're not moving at all. The army doesn't stop. You leave them. Maybe someone says a prayer, maybe not. The march continues. Their equipment is distributed. Their food is eaten. Their name is forgotten within days. When the army stops for more than a night, a camp is established. If there's time, if leadership cares, trenches are dug. Earthworks raised. Simple fortifications that might slow an enemy charge. You help dig. Everyone digs. The labor is backbreaking and endless. The officers point and bark orders. You swing the shovel or pickaxe. Your hands blister. You're already blistered from marching, but now you have new blisters. The camp is organized chaos. Officers and knights in the center where it's safest. Common soldiers on the perimeter where you're most likely to die if the camp is attacked. Latrines are dug downwind, though the smell drifts regardless. Cooking fires everywhere. The smell of unwashed bodies, smoke, shit, and fear. There's a hierarchy you learn quickly. Knights above everyone. Sergeants and veteran soldiers above you. You're at the bottom. You do what you're told. You stand when ordered. You march when ordered. You dig when ordered. You fight when ordered. Training happens sometimes, if there's time. Someone shows you how to hold the spear properly, how to stand in formation, how to brace when cavalry charges. The training is brief and inadequate. You'll learn the rest in battle if you survive to learn anything. Gambling is everywhere. Men betting on dice, on cards, on anything. They bet their pay, though pay rarely comes. They bet their food, their spare clothes. They bet because there's nothing else to do. Because boredom is almost worse than fear, fighting breaks out. Not with the enemy, among yourselves. Men arguing over nothing, over an insult, over a woman that exists only in memory. The fights are brief and brutal. Officers break them up or don't. Blood is spilled, bones are broken, life continues. Women follow some armies, camp followers. Wives who refuse to be left behind. Prostitutes looking for income. Washerwomen, cooks, merchants. They exist at the edge of the camp. You see them rarely. You're too poor, too low ranked to afford their services or attention. The worst part isn't fighting. It's waiting to fight. Knowing battle is coming, seeing the enemy in the distance, and then waiting. Days sometimes, weeks, both armies facing each other across a field or river, neither wanting to commit first. You wait in formation, standing with your spear, the sun beating down, your stomach empty, your throat dry, waiting for someone to decide. Fear is constant during the waiting. It sits in your gut like a stone. You try not to show it. Everyone around you is trying not to show it. You joke. You laugh too loud at things that aren't funny. You tell stories about home. You think about running. You don't run. Where would you go? At night you imagine the battle. You imagine yourself being brave. You imagine surviving. You imagine dying. The images blend together until you're not sure which outcome you're hoping for. Prayer becomes more frequent. Men who never prayed at home suddenly remember every saint, every blessing, every half-forgotten verse. You pray too, Not for victory, just for survival. Just to see your village again, your wife, your children. Some men desert. They slip away at night. Sometimes they make it, sometimes they're caught and hanged as an example. You watch the hangings. You think about deserting. You don't. The fear of execution is slightly greater than the fear of battle. When battle finally comes, it comes fast. Orders shouted. Formation tightened. You grip your spear until your knuckles go white. Your heart hammers so hard you think everyone can hear it. The enemy is across the field. They look like you. Common men holding spears they don't want to use. But there are also knights, armored cavalry, professional soldiers. And there's someone in charge who's decided that this field, this day, is worth dying for. The advance begins. Sometimes you charge. Sometimes you stand and wait for them to charge. The ground trembles. The noise is overwhelming. Shouting. War cries. The thunder of hooves if cavalry is involved. Then contact. The lines meet. And everything becomes chaos. You thrust your spear at whoever is in front of you. Someone thrusts back. You're shoved from behind by your own men. You stumble. You recover. You stab again. You don't think. Thinking will get you killed. You react. Men fall. You don't know if you killed them or someone else did. You step over bodies. Some are enemy. Some are companions from your own fire. You don't stop to check. The noise is unbelievable. Screaming. Metal on metal. Men begging. Men cursing. Orders being shouted that no one can hear. The smell is worse. Blood. Shit. Fear sweat. Vomit. You're hit. A blow to your side. Your jerkin absorbs most of it, but you'll have a bruise. Another blow glances off your helmet. You stagger. Someone steadies you. You keep fighting. Time distorts. The battle could last minutes or hours. You can't tell. You're in a space beyond time, beyond thought, just survival. And then it's over. Suddenly, someone broke. Maybe your side, maybe theirs. One army runs. The other pursues or doesn't. You're standing in a field surrounded by dead and dying. Your hands are shaking. You're covered in blood. Not all of it yours. After the battle, you count the living. Your small group of companions. Some are gone. The blacksmith's son is lying 20 yards away with his throat cut. The troublemaker lost an arm. He's bleeding out. Someone should help him. No one does. He'll be dead within the hour. The wounded who can be saved are taken to whatever passes for a medical area. Men with basic knowledge of wounds. They have wine to clean injuries, needle and thread to close them, saws to remove limbs that are too damaged. No anesthetic. Men are held down while bones are set, limbs removed, wounds cauterized. The screaming from the medical area is worse than the battle sounds. You're lucky. You survived relatively intact. Bruises, cuts, nothing that won't heal. You help drag bodies. Your side's bodies are buried if there's time. The enemy's bodies are left, or burned, or robbed first and then left. You search the dead for anything useful: food, money, better equipment. It's not disrespectful, it's practical. They don't need it. You do. You take a better dagger from a dead man, boots that fit better than yours. You don't think about whose feet wore them yesterday. That night, around the fire, no one speaks much. You eat. You drink if there's anything to drink. You stare at flames and think about who's gone. You think about how easily you could be gone. You thank whichever saint you prayed to. You promise to do better. You know you probably won't. If you're very lucky, eventually the war ends. Victory or defeat, you don't really know which. You weren't told why you were fighting. You're not told why it's over. You're just told you can go home. The journey back is longer than the journey there. You're injured. You're exhausted. You're walking alone now. Your companions are dead or went different directions. You have no food, no money. You beg in villages. You steal when you have to. You reach your village weeks later, months later. You're barely recognizable, thinner, scarred, older in ways that have nothing to do with time. Your wife sees you coming, she runs to you. Or she doesn't. Maybe she's remarried, thinking you dead. Maybe she's dead herself. Plague came through while you were gone. Or famine. Or just bad luck. Your children are taller, or they're gone. You don't ask. The answers hurt too much. You return to your field, if it's still yours. If someone hasn't claimed it, you pick up your hoe, you start working. Your hands, which learn to kill, remember how to plant. You don't talk about the war, no one asks. The village has its own problems. Your experience matters only to you. You carry it silently, in nightmares, in flinching at sudden noises, in the way you can't stand in crowds anymore. You survived. That's more than many can say. You work your field, you pray, you try to forget. You never do. 3 lives, 3 forms of hardship. The monk giving up freedom for faith. The peasant giving up comfort for survival. The soldier giving up safety for duty he never chose. None of them asked for easy lives. None of them received them. But they endured. In stone cells and muddy fields and bloody meadows they endured. Without recognition, without reward, without the promise that any of it mattered beyond the next day, the next season, the next battle. History remembers kings and conquests. It forgets the men who prayed in darkness, who planted in rain, who died in fields whose names they never knew. But they were the foundation, the ones who held everything up while getting nothing in return except the chance to do it again tomorrow. And they did. Day after day, year after year, century after century. They bent but didn't break. They suffered but didn't surrender. They carried weight that would crush us. And they carried it quietly. Without complaint, because complaint wouldn't plant the grain or win the battle or finish the prayer. Tonight, as you drift towards sleep, remember them, not as numbers or concepts, but as people. People who hurt and hoped and hungered, who loved their families and feared their deaths, who found small joys in terrible circumstances, who kept going because stopping wasn't an option. The monk in his cell, the peasant in his field, the soldier on his march. Different lives, different struggles, but the same quiet strength, the same stubborn persistence, the same refusal to let the weight of the world crush them completely. They endured, and in their endurance they built everything we inherit. Not the castles or cathedrals, but something deeper. The knowledge that people can survive almost anything, that ordinary people contain extraordinary strength, that even without glory or recognition, a life lived with purpose, with dignity, with simple determination to see tomorrow matters. The bells are ringing, the sun is rising, the march continues, and somewhere, in stone and soil and memory, they're still enduring, still holding up the world, still teaching us what it means to carry on. Rest now, their work is done, ours continues. But for tonight, let their stories carry you, let their strength comfort you. Let their quiet persistence remind you that you too can endure, that tomorrow will come, and that sometimes simply making it through is victory enough. Good night, my peaceful travelers.